All right, well, we're changing things up. Our next speaker is Ahola Young, and Laura is new to the project. She actually just came on, well, I guess, did you do it last semester too, a little bit? Yeah, you did do it. Okay, so I guess, but she wasn't part of our first planning group, so she's a new faculty member who's using this in art. And I got to tell you, she was one of the brave art faculty members, because I tried for a long time to get somebody from the visual and performing arts to participate, and I had a harder time envisioning how this might help. Last night I was at the Gym Legacy event, and I had 2 faculty members express an interest in doing this now in the performing arts, so it's pretty exciting for all of us. The one thing I want to mention too about Lecture Tools, because Amy brought it up, Lecture Tools was kind enough to allow us, they're very interested in our iPad project because we set it up like an experiment, that they actually gave us the opportunity, or gave Amy the opportunity to use it for free of charge. So I'm hoping that, you know, over time as we approach this as a study, that we can become a beta site for some of these tests and figure out how best to, again, use these tools.
Here. Actually, I'm going to give that to you. I'm going to have you use it. Can I pick on you?
You're going to pick on me?
Uh-huh.
How about we pick on Mark? Or Zena? I'd like to be picked on.
I'm going to pick on you.
Okay, all right. All right. So let's put that in your pocket.
Okay.
But you can pick on me. Okay.
All right.
All right.
I'm just going to pick on you for I'm mic'd. Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Ahola Young. It's Finnish. It's Aloha backwards, in case you're confused. I'm not only new to the iPad project, I'm new to Idaho State. This is my first year. In my first month here, Candy called me and said, do you want iPads for your classroom? I was like, okay. So I did. And I can tell you right now, I don't know if I can teach my classes without them anymore, because they're so integrated to everything I do. I was trying to put together this PowerPoint, and I was trying to put together a really fluid, concise PowerPoint. And what I've noticed is I'm always surprised by what I and the students are using the iPad for, that it hasn't been a very fluid experience, but it has been very beneficial. I titled this Learning to See with the iPad because I thoroughly believe in an intro to drawing class, I can teach anyone to draw if that student's motivated, right? And what I'm not teaching people how to draw, I'm teaching people how to see. And so the iPad to me has been a tool, just like charcoal, just like a pencil, of learning how to see. And so I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to ask Candy, if she could just draw an apple for a minute.
Oh. I think I may actually prove you wrong.
No, well, I haven't taught you yet, right? Can I show it?
Oh, I can't see it.
No. So this is Candy's apple.
It's
right?
a candy apple.
And the reason I had this do is students come in with some drawing skills. I actually prefer students with no drawing skills because I don't have to break any habits. And they think they can, everyone, if I asked anybody in here, you could draw an apple because you know what an apple looks like. But what you're not accustomed to is really looking at an apple. So what I teach students to do is really look at an apple. And so we're using the Apple iPad to do that. So I sort of split this into 4 areas: how I'm using the iPads to build student portfolios, how we're using it as a tool, how we're accessing contemporary art and images in the classroom, and then how I'm helping students learn to put art in a contemporary context. So the first thing is portfolio. So last semester when I had the iPads, I didn't have any apps. So I was really just reduced to camera functions, which was fine and very useful. I have to admit to everyone, Candy's not surprised by this, but these iPads are the only technology in the art department other than our personal computers. We have nothing, right? So this is a big step for the art department. So the first thing we did last semester is I'm building portfolios for students, which is really important because when you're an art student, if my students want to go on and get a graduate degree, they need high quality work, images of their work. They also, if they want to apply for shows, they need high quality images. So my students are tasked with anytime they finish an image to take a photo of it and build a portfolio. So the first 3 students are BFA students. This is Sean, and all of the work I'm showing you right now from Sean is from 1 class. This is from Drawing 2. So that's all from one semester of work, right? Typically in each class, I expect my students to do 10 to 12 images that they're proud of. He's still my student and will be my student until he graduates, and he's in a class now, so he's building a new portfolio. So by the time he's graduated, he will have everything he's done digitally, which when it comes to grading for me, it's great because he can just send me back the portfolio. I can look at it. They're learning how to take the photographs, they're learning how to crop, they're learning how to build it. I know many schools that students never turn their drawings in. They're only turning in digital portfolios. So this is the first time we can do that. That's another student, Aubrey. She's not in my class right now. She doesn't have any classes with me. But she will be meeting with me. Most of my students will be meeting with me at the end of the term to come back. A lot of my students, one thing that happens, they'll get knocked on my doors or they'll come right to my classroom and be like, I need a portfolio I need an iPad right now, Laura. Right? Even if I'm using them. I'm like, well, why? Well, I'm in my drawing class and I need it. So sometimes we'll figure it out, and so just bring it back. I have a little checkout sheet because I get nervous about losing them, right? So these are portfolios that are being built. I love showing my students' work because I'm always very proud. So this is all from Drawing 2, which you're all welcome to take. You have to take Drawing 1 first. All right. So this is the technology we're used to. You're used to your BFA member. Remember this? This is a viewfinder. Lori, have you used one of these? This is what we're used to. We set up the still life, arm's length distance. You remember this? And we're looking at the still life through it, and that's how we crop the still life. So we know how to do it on, so we know what we're putting on the piece of paper as we're drawing. This is what I grew up with, right? You have them, and they're all full of charcoal, and they're all grubby and gross, and you have to make like 10 of them a semester. Well, now we have this, right? A lot of drawing teachers don't think the photograph is appropriate in the classroom. And I had some reservations. A couple years ago, the great artist David Hockney came out with a book called Secret Knowledge. And what he did, he's a painter from the Bay Area, and he took 4 years off of painting, and he went to Europe and he studied the old masters because he was convinced that they were tracing. And that book kind of changed the way we look at some of the classical artists. This is Ingres. And if I want you to pay attention to those faces. In drawing, if you've been in a drawing class, you make like 800 marks before you get the right one. If you look at those faces, those are not, there's no searching lines, what we call them. They're pretty photorealistic. Caravaggio, he's holding the glass in his other hand. What David Hockney figured out is that they were using camera obscuras in their work. And he has a lot of documentation to prove it. And this is what a camera obscura will do. So they're using concave mirrors to create an image and tracing, right? So there's a precedent for this. In fact, there's a precedent in technology for arts all the time. The Impressionists, part of it is they just wanted to go and explore color, but they also understood color for the first time, and they were competing with the photograph, right? So technology changed the way we painted because we were forced to try new things. They're also using camera lucidas. Even Norman Rockwell would trace photographs. So it's not unusual to use a camera in the classroom. This is Da Vinci. And you'll see, do you see how those lines that don't make sense, those gesture lines? That's proof of an artist looking and using their eyes to see where something's placed. But we didn't see that in the Ingres work, right? This is the contemporary artist Diebenkorn. You can see how many times they drew a line to get it right. So we're using the camera on the iPads a lot. So this is the still life. The student's tasked with using the camera on the still life, using it as a viewfinder, right? No more pieces of paper. They can then take that photograph, turn it into a black and white right on the camera app, and do their drawing, right? And so what I have happening in my drawing classes, they're standing here on one easel, the iPad's on one easel with a photograph, and then they're looking at the still life. Amazing to me, they're using the still life more than the app, right? And students are always wanting to draw from photographs. And they're learning that the photograph lies a little bit. You can see when we're looking at something, we're always using two eyes, right? The photograph doesn't move. You tilt your head slightly and things change. So when I'm teaching students how to see, now I have the photograph. They can see that the photograph lies, and to really study the values and the still life. But they have that tool, and then they can compare it. They can compare the proportions and everything. They can do this, put them next to each other on the iPad, right? So the reason I had you draw an apple is because what students will do is they'll draw what they think they see, right? They think this is what an apple looks like, so they go to that instead of going to what's in front of them, right? So one thing I haven't done this semester until yesterday is ask my students, do you like the iPad, right? Because I don't ask them if they like charcoal, because I know what I'm going to hear, right? And I don't ask them if they like drawing still lifes, because they really don't. So the iPad to me it's inconsequential to me if they like the iPad, but overwhelmingly they do like the iPad. So here's another example from using the iPad to crop, because I'm also always teaching composition, right? Like, how do you compose a picture? So they can do that work. This is what the still life looks like, right? This is old school, looking at that still life through there. And so that's what my classroom looks like. I spend 6 hours a week with these students. I get to know them a long time. I have a no cell phone policy in my classroom. If you want to use the cell phone, go outside. But oftentimes students used to, like last year where I used to teach, they would sneak and take a picture of that still life, right? Thinking it wasn't okay with me. And then they would be looking at their phones to help them see the still life. But now I'm giving them permission to do it right in the classroom. So here's some more. It helps with reflections. A lot of times we dim the lights, so they have a kind of a clearer view of the lighting of the iPad than they sometimes do of the still life. And they move things around to get a better image. So you saw some of these work in the other student's portfolio. This student came in absolutely convinced they couldn't draw, right? So this is her composition. And she still complains a little bit that she can't draw. And then she came up with that, right? So not only can she draw, I told her she had an amazing sense of composition, right? These skulls in real life are very difficult to draw, but it helps with the camera, right? So this was a fun project. I hadn't planned it, and I said, I was eating a bowl of popcorn the night before, and my students were getting kind of antsy with the still life. I said, popcorn. And I said to my daughter, every popcorn is so different. She's like, oh, God, Mom, don't go to your class and say that. So I came in, and I had rolls of duct tape, right? And I said, we're drawing popcorn today. And they're like, that's way too hard. I said, no, it's not. And so they took a little thing of duct tape right on their easels, put the popcorn on it so it stayed on the duct tape, and then they started photographing it and playing with composition on the iPad. And then they came up with these. Right? And we were having our art auction chili feed where we were selling caramel corn. So these drawings were all around the wall. Right? So this student, and here's the drawing. During break, I came back in after break, and he was like, Laura, I just sold my popcorn drawing for like $75. And I said, well, who in here bought your... And he looked down, and I said, what's going on? He's like, I just posted it on Facebook. With the iPad. I said, you what? He's like, well, I use the iPad and I posted it on Facebook, and I already had an offer. And I said, well, how often do you do that? He's like, Laura, we do that all the time when it's break time. And so what I realized is, like, they're getting feedback from their drawings on Facebook from all their family and friends without me even knowing it, right? And so, like, other people are seeing what they're doing in live time. I'm certainly, like, present in the classroom, so I notice if they're on Facebook, but I'm not watching them during break. Right? So it's very interesting. They didn't think they could do these popcorn drawings. Just so you know, that the popcorn drawings are 18 by 24 inches. Right? And this one is doesn't that look like a horse or something? Critical thinking and creativity in the arts classroom. Often I have this rubric that I sometimes use. I'm like, this is creativity. This is not so much, right? And I always talk about, I grade, a majority of my grades based on willingness to try new things. And the iPads really helped with that because they can document the process of their work and be more willing to make changes because they have a digital piece that happened beforehand. So we use the iPads a lot to take pictures of how things progressed in the classroom. So the beginning of a painting to the end of a painting, right? And they're tasked every time they leave a drawing to take a picture of it before they leave so they can come back. We don't use the iPads in painting as much as in the drawing room just because of the paint, right? I don't want to have like oil paint all over the iPads all the time. And oil's pretty messy and it will be hard to get off. Here's another one. So I thought the students would love taking selfies with the iPads, right? Like to do self-portraits. I couldn't get one of my students to take a selfie. Not one. So what we did is we did gridded portraits, but we got the portraits, and they were actually so embarrassed to take pictures of themselves. It was crazy. I'm like, if I saw your phone right now, how many would you have? And they just looked down. So I did a lot of interviewing with them, getting them to talk to take these candid portraits, because when I asked them to bring pictures in, they have these pose portraits or wedding dresses, and that's not really what I'm looking for when I ask them to do self-portraits. So we're using these, and the next portrait we're doing is going to be with the camera on the easel as a live mirror, right? And so this student was really embarrassed, and I apologize for the gesture, but he was really embarrassed to have his picture taken. And he's actually one of our star baseball pitchers, and he's the sweetest kid ever. I said, well, pretend to be someone you're not. And so this is what I got, and this is what he chose. Because this is really not him. And then we're doing distorted portraits of those. We're using the iPads to distort the portrait a little bit, and they have a lot of fun doing this. We also use these for gesture drawing. In the classroom, you will know, I won't pick on you again, Candy. I'll pick on someone else if I can. I know you, Yolanda. So a gesture drawing is because I'm teaching people to see. I'm teaching them to use their eyes. And if you've been in our class before, you know, like we're going to do 15, 30-second gesture drawings where you're not looking at the paper. And students absolutely hate doing this because they're embarrassed, right? So I'm going to pause for 10 seconds and have you just draw me. But you can't look at the iPad, right? You can't look at the iPad. Just draw me. Look at yeah. Don't look at that iPad. So this is really hard for students. Go now. Don't think about it. Just draw me, right? Just keep going, right? And this is really scary for students, right? Because they're not looking. They're blind gesture drawings. And we used to go through papers and papers, like so much charcoal and so much newsprint to get this done, right? And they don't want to see it, but now they can do it on the iPad, and they can be very private about it, right? Which is really helping. Some days, 6 hours a week with students, sometimes the energy gets antsy. One thing I love about the iPads is I was like, okay, go to the student union, do 50 gesture drawings, and come back. And they just love getting out of the classroom, right? And they don't have to lug everything with them. So these are examples of that, 30-second gesture drawings. My students share iPads, so I label the iPads, and between classes, they come back to the same iPad, and that's their iPad. When they see somebody else from the other class doing something on their iPad, they get a little cranky about it, right? So there's a lot of times one class initials them, another class doesn't, and they fight about, well, why do I have to have my initials on this, right? What's the easiest way for me to do it? Perspective drawing is a really hard thing to teach. Right? Find your vanishing point, put your line in the iPad. I haven't used it. This is the first time we're doing perspective drawing in 2 weeks with my drawing one class, so it's the first time I'm using it. I already know it's going to go a lot better, so I quickly did this. But teaching somebody to find a vanishing point is really hard. We could take the photo, download it, put the line in, and they see it, right? Even I've teaching drawing for so long, even I sometimes get, okay, where is that vanishing point? Right? So this student, I'm going to do this afterwards, but it's the first time I've had a student in my Drawing 2 class, we talk about contemporary art movements a lot. This is the first piece of art that was solely done on the iPad. She had to do with something abstract. And I just discovered in the art department, hidden away in my chair's stuff, we had a really high quality printer from the architecture department. So now I understand and can print things. And she's very proud. So it's my first digital. So I was leery of doing digital art because of the cost of printing it. But now I can make it happen. And then she did her portrait and was able to change the color. We have access to images and visual research. I don't always allow drawing right from a photograph, but sometimes I do let it happen. This wouldn't happen unless it was the classroom. We did a surrealist piece where we did exquisite poetry, where they wrote down a sentence and folded it, and we kept handing it around. We come up with these really bizarre poems that they then are tasked to draw. Or now they can go right to the iPad, search for images. So she got the head of the bird while she was doing this drawing, was able to put it right in. When I was in undergraduate school, I had to go to the library. I had to go through all the books, right? And I had to like take those heavy books over to the copying, Xerox, I still say Xerox, make Xerox copies, bring them back to the studio, and it took a lot longer. Now it's instant, right? He wanted to do a picture with the touch. Right there, it was in the classroom. Venus from the half shell, right? This is all from my iPad. The toilet to the Venus with a selfie, right? This is also from the Surrealist Chord. This is a picture of an inmate looking for a pen pal that one of my students found that she put in. It was the silliest picture, and it's this really lovely drawing now. That wouldn't have happened in the classroom without an iPad. And this is one of my students who was dealing with some pain issues, needed this reference. It was right there for her. She's now doing this kind of work where she's doing folded paper paintings like that, and she wants to put intestines in them. So she's looking at pictures of intestines, merging the images together on the iPad, and then she'll be putting that on this paper. We did upside down portraits because I'm always trying to teach. A large part of my job is teaching students to look at contemporary artists. So this is the artist Lucian Freud. They had it on the iPad. They had to turn it black and white, draw it upside down. They also had a print of this, a Xerox, and printed that and did their own drawing. But for the first time ever doing this assignment, I say, okay, that's Lucian Freud. They Google Lucian Freud, they can see every single one of his works and read about the artist right there in the classroom. Kehinde Wiley, same thing. And when they do this, when they spend this time looking at another artist's work, drawing it, they fall in love with those artists. But now it's right there in the class. Lichtenstein, Willie can look at Lichtenstein's work. She did this portrait. We were doing a piece on German Expressionism. So the student did a piece that was influenced by them. And I think she got like a posture and like the defeated kind of dark thing going on really well, all from an iPad. Am I going too long? Am I okay? All right. So this is a nursing student who was in my anatomy class last year, and during critique, she came out with the fact that she was in a mixed marriage. In a mixed race marriage, and she fell apart in a critique and was crying. We were all very supportive. I get to know my students very well, and she had done this piece about her wanting to turn her back on society because of what she was going through here in Pocatello. So she did this piece. She then, through an iPad and me talking to her, because she loves watercolor, learned about the Ottis Ross Bleckner, who does a lot of piece about AIDS and cellular work. And she also looked at my work. I do watercolor about cells. And she started doing this kind of work. And our next assignment, she was supposed to develop content. So I had her portfolio from last semester, and we went back and looked at it. And I said, what's going on with that skin? She's like, I don't know. So together, by looking at this, we came up with her new body of work. And she's studying cellular images right there in the classroom on the iPad about how skin, on a molecular level, doesn't look any different, right? So it was a really moving experience to be part of that with her. And these drawings are really really beautiful. And she just got into nursing school, right? This student did this drawing right there in the classroom. I'm like, do you know the work of Wangechi Mutu? Because you should. And that started her love of this contemporary artist. So I'm able to teach these students about context right there in the classroom. Sometimes it's hard because they think they have this brand new idea, and I have this store of artists that I know, right? Done it before. But I always tell them that those are their soulmates, right? That you found your soulmate in art, but I can prove it to them right in the classroom. So she loved Gerhard Richter and started doing pieces like Gerhard Richter. This was a grad student that I went to school with, and this student wanted to do some magical realism pieces. Vijay Salmons, and you saw these in the first portfolio, but what you didn't see was that he was looking at that contemporary artist, and he was also looking at cantaloupes on the iPad and incorporating them into his work. Kiki Smith led the student to do this piece and this piece. And I can, and I do show them artists, but this helps me teach them a lot more individually. Like, I didn't show you this artist, but you need to know this artist. And I'm able to do that in the class. And then, because it's our only technology in the art department, I'm using these to document our senior shows that are happening and installation work that might be going on. So, I just want to say that what I realized last night, I was thinking about this presentation, is that sometimes the iPads don't work, right? Sometimes the internet doesn't work. Sometimes, for whatever reason, like students are charged with telling me if I need to take it into the office and charge it, because I have 14 that I'm in charge of charging. And sometimes they're not charged. One thing that I've learned is my students are really good at sharing. It's like, oh, you need the internet right now, mine's working, you can have this one, I'll take yours. And that they never get upset if the iPads aren't working. Because what I realize is we're always dealing with paint and charcoal, and that stuff doesn't work all the time either. It's certainly not how we want to use it. So it is just simply another one of our tools, right? That works sometimes, works the way we want it, and sometimes it doesn't. So that's my end. Thanks for drawing.
Don? Okay, you mentioned a couple of things. This is a drawing done solely on an iPad, and in another case, we use the iPad to distort the image. So really, those are software.
Yeah.
Right? So can you tell us briefly what software you had?
We're using just Sketchbook Pro. I mean, I'm keeping it to one. Sometimes my students know more software. If I have an app, I need the app on all of them. So we're really just using the one software, Sketchbook Pro. And what I wanted to say, but it wasn't appropriate because I'm not trying to identify students, and I want to talk to Candy about this at some point. But one thing I am observing is that my students who come in with accommodations, letters of accommodations for learning disabilities, are the students who migrate to the iPad the most and are very comfortable with it, and in fact would rather use the iPad than paint or charcoal. And I'm okay with that. I'm just really impressed by how they're not intimidated as much with the iPad. And I don't know what that piece is about, but it feels really important in my classrooms. Thanks.